Hello there. Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? It's a sunny Thursday afternoon. I hope it's sunny where you are. And usually we do employee engagement live on Fridays, but today is a special day and we have a very special guest. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Shrikant Acharya. I'm the CEO at Offineeds.com. Offineeds is a leading corporate gifting and merchandise company based in Bengaluru, Chennai, and Hyderabad. And today is the 33rd episode of Employee Engagement Live, where I bring in seasoned professionals from the HR, corporate communication, and leadership of different businesses, mostly large organizations. And I had a chat with them about their ideas, philosophies, anecdotes, experiences related to employee engagement. Let me not take too long and let me introduce to you today's speaker. Today's guest is a LinkedIn power profile. He's got about 5.3 lakh followers on LinkedIn, and he's truly a powerhouse. He's a TEDx speaker, a columnist, and an active tweeter. A human resource strategist with diverse industry experience from the civil service to engineering, information technology, pharmaceuticals, automotive, and a conglomeration of hydrocarbons, retail, media, and telecom and digital services. He's currently the founder and CEO at PRABIR JHA People Advisory, through which he advises a range of companies from startups to large corporations across a range of domains on strategic HR issues, including board effectiveness, talent and leadership, organizational transformation, culture renewal, executive coaching, and a lot more. In an HR career that spanned close to 30 years, he's worked with companies like Indian Ordnances Factory Services, that's basically civil services. He was in the working for the government of India. He was working with Thermax, Babcock and Wilcox, Tech Mahindra, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, Tata Motors, Reliance, and Cipla. He's been the CHRO of two New York Stock Exchange listed companies and also the CHRO of two Fortune 500 companies. He's helped all companies where he had been the CHRO to make it to the list of top 10 best companies to work for in India. He's a winner of several awards and honors, including ET HR World Influencer 2022, LinkedIn Top Voices 2022, Top HR Influencers in India 2020, issued by Bloggers Alliance, and many more. His introduction can go on and on, but let me cut it short here and let me introduce you to the man who literally dons many hats. Welcome to Employee Engagement Live, Prabir Jha. How are you doing today?
Hi, Shrikant. Good to see you. Good afternoon. Lovely to meet up with you and to people on the show.
Likewise. Looking forward to a very interesting conversation. Prabir, let me start with the first question that I ask every guest who comes on my show. What, according to you, Prabir, is employee engagement?
See, employee engagement is anything which actually moves passive membership of an organization to active ownership and accomplishment for the organization. Right. So that's really what I believe is my view of employee engagement. And we can discuss both what is an employee and what is engagement, I'm sure, as we go along. But that's really what it is, from a very passive to an active ownership and accomplishment of an organization's, aims and aspirations, as if they were your own. That's really engagement.
Awesome. Fantastic. I think that's a great start. So I want to thank the audience, whoever is joining. You're on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. And if you have any comments, you can put it down. If you have nothing to say, I see Sandeep Goswami is saying amazing. Hi guys, hello. You can put in your comment. You can type in the comments there. And in a few more minutes, I'm going to invite you to put any questions that you have in the comment box, and I'm going to point it to Prabir, and let's hear about. Prabir, one of the questions that I'm very curious to ask and to understand is, from an employee expectation and an employee engagement point of view, how is it different across different sectors? You worked with the government, you worked in pharma, you worked in manufacturing, IT, and different domains, right? How is it different?
So it's a great question, and I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. At one level, the employee experiences are the same. Right? The fundamental human expectations of any member of any organization is the same. They want to come in, they want to feel assured, they want to feel protected, they want to do their best, they want to be appreciated, recognized, and finally look back with a lot of fulfillment that I made a difference to the organization that I was part of, and I was truly well cared for. So that's no different. But as the years have rolled by, and as I've looked at the 30 years, and I've seen all the way from the government where you can't promote, reward, recognize anyone ahead of what the norms are, to a time when we talk about the great resignation, right, or the great rethink, the the implications and asks of engagement have changed somewhat. So, for example, and I will maybe talk later about why I don't like stereotypes, but to begin with, a very stereotypical response, you know, people today live in a world of greater choice.
Hmm.
People live in a world of actually being spoiled for choice. And when you're spoiled for choice, and you're not a generation which is kind of just coming in to make sure your baseline is met, maybe
Yeah.
our my parents' generation did that, or maybe even a generation before. Every successive generation, therefore, is coming from a much better placed pedestal in life. And therefore, what they seek out of their 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours or whatever hours and how many days in a week is qualitatively very different than what their earlier generation did. So it's no longer about survival. It is literally, if you imagine Maslow's hierarchy, they are slowly moving towards where they would love to be more self-actualized. And therefore, whether it's a 3-day week or a 5-day week, or 6 hours or 5 hours, all of these are expressions of a very assured workforce that we have today, and with a very different attitude towards what typically drives them. So that's been the
Right.
change that I see.
Right. So I'm really curious to know. You had a fledgling career with the civil services, right? I mean, I don't know many people who quit that and join corporate. So you made that change, and about 2 years back, you quit corporate and started an advisory. So what is driving you to take such drastic initiatives, if I may use that word?
So it's exactly how you feel engaged. So we talk about employees. We must also acknowledge each one of us individually wants to feel engaged. So uh, I mean, civil services is a dream job. I mean, out of 5 lakh people, 500 people get selected a year. So this is what I always wanted to do. I cleared it first shot, but a decade later I quit. Ironically, for a very poor HR handling of my reimbursement claims at Accelerate, Jamshedpur. So it's bad HR which got me into the world of HR. And then another 2 decades of leading HR in some of the most marquee names in corporate India, you realize you've done it all. Now it's the same thing over and over again. I mean, you can play safe and continue to earn your dollars and feel comfortable. But for me, life has always been about challenging oneself, both intellectually and in terms of my ability to impact. And I believe that this is an opportunity where I can touch many more companies which need help, which desperately need help. Whether you're a more mature organization or you're more in the startup domain, they don't have access to the kind of HR input that they should get much earlier in their life stage. So there's an opportunity there. Individuals, they need help. So here I can impact more lives, more people, rather than be captive to one organization. And that to me is my maturing sense of ask of what would engage me, to live my life and wake up the next morning. So that's really my answer.
Awesome, love it. So probably as we were having a quick chat just before the show started, you said you used the word unleashing talent, right? I really loved. I was fascinated by what you said there. So can you tell us a little bit about why you said employee engagement as a concept is probably at the end, right?
See,
So tell us a little bit about that.
so I must put the caveat. I think different than most HR people. I'll be honest, and I don't want to be seen as a rebel without a cause. But the reason I said I think employee engagement, and I've written a lot about it, I personally believe is still very passive.
Mm.
You know, so what if your employees are engaged? So what happens? We are not in the show business. We are not running a Sas Bahu serial that I need eyeballs glued to the TV. That's not the engagement I seek. I want it to be more active,
Mm.
right? And therefore, the word I used was we are in the business of unleashing, you know, the employee. Does he or she actually get engaged or excited to a point where they're willing to unleash themselves, their minds, their hearts, Are they thinking innovatively? They thinking disruptive? Are they going the extra mile? Or are they just doing the tick box? So an employee engagement doesn't really mean that they are going to give you anything beyond. They may be engaged to even do the basics. If you look at and I remember looking at engagement surveys in my own career, and sometimes there are people who are switched off. That is a silent thing. So they're switching the lights on every day, but that's not going to change the organization. And that too in a context where the world is changing, the VUCA reality. So I want, the hearts and minds and imagination and energy and the willingness to change the world, lots more palpable. And therefore, employee engagement is just the start. But the strategic outcome I would like to see in companies and with leaders and their success in doing it is, are you able to unleash, not control and regiment your workforce? I want companies to be more practice rich and rather than policy invasive. But you look around, most companies are policy, 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 policy. I mean, many, many years ago, when I did 6 months of maternity leave, I mean, no MNC had thought of doing that in Dr. Reddy's when we did this over 15, 16 years ago. Today, it is law. So what was engaging in my context at that time became common practice. When I did surrogate leave many years ago, no one had talked about surrogate leave. When I talked about bereavement leave or blah, blah, blah. So today, now they are saying, okay, why 4 weeks? We'll give 6 weeks. I don't think that engages. You can... So somewhere we have got into a lot of cloning and cutting and pasting of policies rather than think about what for your employee. And I'll talk about individual employee versus the collective possibly as we go along. But I think we have oversimplified and overly stereotyped both engagement and the word employee. So we'll talk about that as we go forward.
Yeah, actually, that was exactly going to be my next question. I want to ask, it's ideal, right? It's idealistic to have it that way. But in a small team, maybe you have 10, 50, 100 people, it's probably realistic that you know what everybody wants and you may be able to engage each one in their own style and everything, right? But when you have hundreds and maybe thousands of employees in the organization, how is it possible to do that? So we'll speak a little bit about that, shall we?
Yeah. So first, I believe it is possible and it must happen. It's not even an issue of possibility. If you can't do it, then you're not a good enough leader, you're not a good enough manager, you're not a good enough HR. And the reality is it doesn't happen, right? But I'll tell you why. First of all, we believe that engagement is a set of policy instructions. First of all, even if you do a Rangoli contest, whether it engages or not, I don't know, right? But this day we will do Rangolis. Who decides? Why? Why did you decide? How do you validate what you're doing is right? I live in a world where I believe the dad does not know best anymore. It is not that the big guys at the top have every answer of what engages people. So that's the first point. The most important responsibility of engagement for any individual in a corporation is the immediate manager and the immediate team around that person. That is what engages or does not engage. I can assure you, anyone who would work, and I see some people who worked on my team also make comments, they would love working with Prabir in any capacity. Even today, if I want to hire, doesn't matter where they are working, they will work with Prabir. Because the person matters. They work for the manager, right? I very strongly believe. What's the point of appearing to be a great company, but my immediate manager is a hoax, right? So there is no disengagement. Second is, each talent or each resource will want a certain kind of team around him or her. And that is why I don't like the word of millennials and such stereotype expressions. It almost makes the world look similar, cloned. That's not how it is. Our sociological imprinting is so different. Our education background is different. Our family acculturation is different. Our national cultures are very different. Our sub-national cultures are unique. And all of that impacts the so-called millennial that we casually use. The genius of a leader, therefore, is to be able to understand that person that you are wanting to engage as different from the other person who's a little different. And unfortunately, we are not able to think that it's our job. Even HR struggles with it. So if you're able to get this acculturation, training, hand-holding, coaching of managers at all levels different, you will have a more broad-based acceptance and ownership of your engagement thinking. And that's the only way you can build scale, right? Otherwise, if you want to do it only through digital apps, you only want to do it through executive orders coming from the C-suite, no engagement will happen. And my counsel to anyone will be that it's no sin for you not to think what works with X, Y, and Z. Why should you believe that because you're a CHRO or a CEO, you have all the answers? Talk to different groups and have some flexibility in the way you administer the so-called levers of engagement, because two people are unique. They will always be unique. And don't force them to be recipients. So it may matter to 5 people, it will possibly not matter to 5 people. So you've lost 5 people. So how do you play? And that is the genius of leadership. That is what leadership should be doing, Shrikant. Unfortunately, they love to make leadership is more left-brained. So they like to address a right brain with a left brain prescription, and never the twain shall meet. I mean, that's part of our problem. We have a construct problem in the way our leadership are constructed. Everyone thinks the same way. So how do you think you will have very engaged workforces? Because you don't think right enough, right? You're too left brain, linear in your thinking.
Absolutely. I totally get what you're saying. And I want to take a minute to thank everybody in the audience who's participating. There's Sandeep, Venkat, Prince, Avijit, Yesdas. Thank you so much. And any questions you have, in a few more minutes, you can point it to Prabir. So Prabir, kind of summarize what you just said. You said that engagement or unleashing or empowering the talent to perform at its best potential should be distributed. It should not be something that is the domain of an HR or one particular department in the organization. Every level of management, every level of supervisors, every level of people in the organization should be taught and empowered to further empower people within their team, because it doesn't matter what the policy says or what the document says. How is each individual feeling at any given day is what matters. And to be able to execute on that, it's important to empower every individual in the organization, and even to be able to sensitize how to behave, speak, and kind of treat each individual separately, instead of putting them in a box saying, hey, he's Gen Z or he's a millennial. So how practical is this? Have you seen this happen somewhere, and how much effort does that take? Is that why employee engagement ends up becoming a checklist activity, saying, hey, let's just do this and let's get our scores and be done with it?
It's very clearly not easy. But who said leadership is an easy sport? If you've chosen to be in the business of leadership, you play leadership as a sport that needs to be played. And the fact is, yes, you can atomize. In fact, the ideal engagement exercises where people can choose the things that they get engagement from. You only create a buffet, right? They will pick what engages. So even if you look at a buffet, you and I would possibly pick very different things from what's on being served. So that is exactly how leaders and managers should be. Allow people a lot more of flexibility and choice. And the fact is that whether someone will come at 9:30 or will come at 10 o'clock, you decide what your core hours are. Just a very standard example I'm giving. But beyond that, let people kind of decide how they want to do. So someone may want to get up late and come later. I met a chief executive recently, and he says, there's a youngster who doesn't want to come at 10 o'clock. And I didn't tell him, but honestly, who cares? I mean, if Einstein were willing to work till 12 o'clock at night and not come at 10 o'clock in the morning, I wouldn't be bothered. I honestly wouldn't be bothered. You're stupid, right? Now, but he's a chief executive, so he thinks he knows it right. And this is part of the problem. The problem is we are trying to force a lot more of boundary conditions than is needed, because we live in a world of leadership by compliance, in a world of leadership by control. I'm not saying, build anarchy, but I think there is a fair bit of gray that we can play with. And the more you give people options and choices, they will own their decisions better. Many years ago, let me share an example. I was a group CHRO of Reliance, and it was a very command and compliance-led ecosystem, right? I remember we moved 24, 25 policies to self-approval. Any individual employee, even the junior most employee, could self-approve travel anywhere in India. His or her manager would get an alert for information, not approval. Now, if 5 Fridays my secretary is going to a certain place, I would have asked that, hey, do you have someone in this particular city? Why every Friday are you going? So as a manager, that's my prerogative. I can ask, but I don't need to control and check. And the logic was, in the last 5 years, I looked at data. No manager had turned down a single travel request. And I said, why don't we build it to greater ownership, greater trust? That one odd guy, an exception, who betrays the trust, sack him. But what is the sentiment that you unleash? That I trust you. And trust is a huge ingredient of employee engagement. The fact that, you allow me to make up my mind. I mean, okay, there'll be three exceptions, but the challenge of companies, the point that you're asking, Shrikant, is they feel even one exception, let's build a policy for it. Us exceptions will be treated as exceptions. That's why you're managers, right? Otherwise, a robot can run everything. All of us can go home, right? So design, practices. Don't design policies which will say thou shalt not. Many years ago in Dr. Reddy's, I don't know whether they call it the same now, but when I was demolishing the policy regime there, the word we used was enablers. We removed even the word and policy, right? Every policy, and anyone who's worked with me will know, if you can't write an HR policy on one page, I'll throw it out of the window. You can't write a manual of policies, and that is the challenge with most HR teams. They make it so difficult. It's like an SOP. So it's a reimagination. HR leaders have to reimagine. CEOs have to reimagine. Someone has to stick his or her neck out and say, let's try this. It could work. But before we have worked, the left brain says, ye reason nahi hai, ye reason nahi hai, ye reason nahi hai. And therefore, you never try to do different. So this is more of an issue of philosophy. Once you're comfortable with the philosophy, tactics are very easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this piece which you said. My takeaway here is less policies, more practices, and more trust. So I want to ask you, what was the impact? You mentioned at Reliance or one of the organizations where you kind of canned about 24 policies, including the one about travel, self-approval of travel. What was the impact of that? Did you see something?
I wish you could hear the words from employees who were there at that time. Maybe some will be on the show and they can opine. When we moved a simple thing, Reliance, from a 6-day week to a 5-day week, and we announced it, I mean, the feedback I heard across every office, every location, every unit of Reliance, people were hugging and kissing as if the Berlin Wall had broken. Because it was unthinkable Reliance could have moved to a 5-day week. So it's a small thing. Many companies are on a 5-day week. But if a company like Reliance finally wilts and is able to make into something which is common, because that's what people need today. So it unleashes a lot of hope and optimism with people. Look at the strategic intent of why engagement should be looked at from a very hardcore business perspective. It's not an HR issue, it's a business issue. Every organization will attract the talent it needs and it can keep. So let's say if your engagement approach is, I will give you a very ordered what you will do job description. Someone like Prabir will never join that company because I'm far too independent thinking. I'm far too experimental than most people. So I will not join that company, and it's okay. But it will attract a certain kind of company. So engagement lever must be a choice of the kind of talent. What do they like? So in some places, people love, what should I call, stability, job security. They don't need anything else. Government of India is the best example of that. Job security. So the kind of people who will move towards Government of India are fundamentally people who will like order, predictability, systems. And there's nothing wrong. That's what it will attract. There, I'm not saying you go and do pizza and Coke parties. You can't have the best of both worlds. You get that. But in another environment, if I were to start hiring employees from my company, I can assure you there will be no policies. I honestly don't want a single policy. You are a member of the organization. Do whatever that sense of ownership demands you to do. Do the right thing. What's the policy you need? So, there are these chances and approaches, and whether it is large scale or small scale, ultimately it's the belief. And you attract, and you should attract and keep people who will enjoy that kind of an ecosystem. Our problem is, we want to bring guys from all the so-called new age ecosystems, but our mindset is about, have you done this or not? Have you reported at this time or not? Which guy is going to continue? Which guy will continue? I mean, people have tasted now how it is working from home. Now you
Right.
suddenly say everyone has to come to work 5 days a week. I can tell you many people will not want to go back to these companies because the world has changed. They've tasted blood. So the
Mhm.
thing about understanding what business demands of your talent mix and what that talent mix will depend of you from an engagement perspective is the equation to solve for, keeping in mind that any talent is a very generic expression. Every individual is finally an individual, and therefore every manager must relate with an individual in the manner that he or she values. So I'll give you one small example. If someone is very introverted and someone is
Mhm.
very extroverted in your team, do you think the engagement levers will be the same? Will the introverted guy love this adulation and gifts and celebration and rewards? The answer is no. He will appreciate a little quiet, sit me down and tell me how good a guy I am. Whereas an extroverted guy, he will love that before 100 people you celebrate me. But does the manager, has he or she become a manager where HR or his or her managers have even coached that person? It isn't. So if you read my blog today, I've talked about promotions. You get promoted to being a manager, but you just do what you've always done. And that is why we have a huge issues in organizations of engagement and attrition and the inability to attract that kind of talent. It's doable, but people have to step back, reflect a little more before they act.
Awesome, awesome. I love the depth with which you're speaking, and there is a lot of clarity. Thank you so much for all the examples which you're sharing. That's really amazing. I want to ask the next question in relation to the role of leadership in creating great workplaces, in creating places where people want to come and perform at their best capability. Right. There are a few questions that have come here. Avijit has mentioned that such is the power of leader who truly believes in engaging hearts and minds. I think he's referring to you in that
Yeah.
context. And Kavindraman says, the biggest challenge today is how to empower leaders to create outstanding employee engagement. Any insights on that? So let's talk a little bit about
Sure.
the role of leadership in creating a great working place.
Great question. In fact, the business of anyone who says I am a leader is leadership. The guy has no other job. The guy is not a sales guy. The guy is not a finance guy. The guy is not an R&D guy. The guy is not an ops guy. The guy is not even an HR guy. The business of leadership is when you're leading people, and it needs first a lot of self assurance. You as a leader must be very self assured, which is not what I can say for every leader. Only when you're self assured will you be able to be vulnerable and be able to respond to people differently, even understand the psychographic makeup of each of your direct reports, and they of their direct reports, and they of their direct reports. That's how the chain happens. And ultimately the job of senior leadership is to make sure they hire right, they promote right, they reward right. Unfortunately, in many organizations we are still stuck by rewarding outcomes. Even if you leave 10 dead bodies behind, as long as you've met your numbers, you're celebrated. The best salesman becomes the sales manager, and that's where the rut starts, because not the best soldier is not necessarily the best general.
Yeah.
And as you rise up the hierarchy, we don't filter right enough, and we create therefore a problem of ourselves. As far as empowerment is concerned, let me be very honest, Shrikant, starting from the top, as I told you, no CEO or board or chairman or anyone actually told me what to do. I don't recall, and I'm not exaggerating. It was my job to set the agenda and then ensure the ownership, sponsorship, and the blessing, right? No one actually told me. No company has anyone said, Prabir, this is what I want you to do. And I have similarly not try to rein in someone down the line because they know their onions better. So when you start practicing the sense of trust, you've hired the right people, they will do the right thing. Your job is to get out of the way, focus on still bigger things, try and see whether you can reinforce some of the messages that you want to go. When people do events, including in HR, I will tell you, I mean, there is a big divide between the rank and file and the bosses, even in some of our industry associations, and I hate it. The big guys never go down and actually wade into the youngsters. How will we build engagement? How are we role modeling? So a lot of it depends in the way leadership will reinvent itself. And particularly in India, leadership is still very positional. And therefore, engagement is almost like charity. Okay, I'll come and show my face and give away 3 prizes. Do you honestly think someone will be engaged? You don't even look at the guy you're giving away a trophy to, you know? So I think a lot of it depends about sensitivity building, which the chairman, the CEO, the C suite must do. When you start building a new vocabulary, a new conversation among your leaders, they will start then internalizing it and practicing it. But we don't. We straight away start. I mean, I asked this question not just for engagement, but I did a post recently and I've talked about it. Most companies say people and all of this is our biggest asset. You look at any management review, any board meeting, where does the HR priority or engagement come? Right at the bottom of the agenda. Isn't it ironical? People are your biggest thing. People is the source of your business. All the bullshit that people talk about from the pulpit. But what do they do? It's right at the end. You're talking about sales. What is the supply chain issue? So we've got our equation wrong, and people don't like to be reminded that they've got it wrong. But unless you fundamentally course correct, you'll only be putting band-aids. You'll do all these engagement surveys and little rangoli contests and giveaways and stuff like that. But that's not going to revisit the quality of work. Are people happy doing the kind of work that they are doing? Is that what they want to do? You hire me, but you want to check with you for every little thing. Sorry. I mean, you can throw free pizzas and coffee. I'm not going to be engaged. So look at the quality of work, look at the space, look at the learning, look at the psychological safety, look at the willingness to tolerate bona fide mistakes. All of this shapes the sense of engagement, the kind of teams around me. Do we have fun, or are we only a dog eat dog culture? Everything has an implication to how an individual feels about engagement in that particular company with that particular manager. So it is finally from top atomized to the individual.
Right, absolutely. I think the so in your experience, how comfortable are leaders, and is it changing, letting go of control, so to say, and building more trust? Are you seeing that happening more often now?
I wish I could say yes. People are talking about it, but at least I am not too sure it's happening. It's a very fundamental belief. Look at it this way: not every so-called leader is a leader. They are very bright people. They are bright minds, right? And I don't want to get more specific because I interact and meet a lot of people, some with blue chip education, I'm not necessarily inspired by their leadership. They may be very bright, but maybe they're good analytical doers, thinkers. They run their numbers well. But are they leaders? I'm sorry, I'm not inspired. So also to confuse blue chip education with leadership is wrong. Right? At the end of the day, many political leaders in the world are not a blue chip. Leadership is an art. Leadership is an art, and leadership needs a lot of self-assurance and vulnerability. And unfortunately, either it is conceit, people think too much about themselves, right? And there is unwillingness to be vulnerable. So when you try to always appear to be correct, you also become a touch me not leader. And I don't think people like to work with leaders who almost appear that I can do no wrong. They want to work with leaders who are human, who smile, who laugh at themselves, who love to say, what, I goofed up yesterday. Sorry, I was wrong. You were right. It is still a long way to go. And a lot of it is to do with fundamental HR rewiring, which will take time. But I think we are in very exciting times. And with so many startups, there's an opportunity. But I'll also say many unicorns don't enjoy the reputation of being very engaging workforces. Now you tell me, these are young companies, new companies, successful companies. So someone will say, does it even matter? Does engagement even matter? Because if financial valuation is the only name of the game, and I don't want to take names of companies, but some of them are very well-known names, right? And I know people in companies who quit or leave and talk stories about engagement in these companies. They have a problem. But the challenge is who's wanting to listen, because as long as the valuation is going up, so there is a paradox at some level, and it's therefore an issue of how authentic do you want a workplace to be? Because if it's all about the money, then there are many ways you can dress the bride up. But if you really want to build an institution where your people are engaged and truly feel valued, appreciated, it is going to be playing a test series. It's not a one-day match.
Absolutely. Really well said. I want to ask the next question, kind of an extension to what Sneha Nair has put out here. She says, what are the ways employee engagement can be aligned with organization goals and vision? And I would kind of tie it to a post which I think you wrote on one of the articles. I'm not able to remember. You spoke about, the transformation of an organization being linked to transformation happening with people and their mindset change. Right. So can you speak a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So, I fundamentally believe there is no change of an abstraction unless the specifics get addressed. So, no collective will change if the individuals don't change. So, first, let's start working on the individual. And to Sneha's point, engagement does not exist in a vacuum. Why are you even doing this? Is the 33rd talk show, and you're doing a human service to the cause of engagement, getting more input, awareness, education, debate to the subject. See, the fact is, people need to be engaged because an organization can deliver to its larger purpose better, more effectively, quicker, with less hindrances. That's the real reason of engagement. And it is not a corporate institution. It could be any, you could be in the forces, you could be, running a philanthropy organization, doesn't matter. But people make an organization. So very clearly, Sneha is right that it must be. And the way to do it is to first start talking about the purpose. So if someone does not relate with the purpose of the company, please make sure you don't make a type 2 error and hire such a person into your organization. There's no right or wrong, but this person does not find joy or connect with your purpose. Similarly, when you start talking about even the vision or the program, your entire people practice must be geared to that thing. So let's say if it is on time, and they believe that, I'll give you a small example, that we want to be the most innovative company. That's the route to our realization of an aspiration 5 years from now. But your entire approach is about check, 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 or your organization is multi-tiered, 10 levels of hierarchy. Do you think innovation will ever happen? Do you think you will ever be speedy? Do you think you'll ever be agile? How will you ever talk about engagement when everything is about check, 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 check? So the point is, whether it is the kind of talent you hire, the kind of managers, the way they manage their teams, the hierarchy of jobs, what do you reward for? I mean, if you want to be in the business of innovation or you want to take that as a route to your success, do you in your annual awards night celebrate 5 best bona fide failures of the year? How many companies do it? You do it, no? Celebrate the best idea which bombed, but celebrate the guy, or you'll say, "Arey, ye to aise hi bolta hai." So the challenger who looks to be, blasphemous today is the guy who creates a new movement tomorrow. But the world lives in conformity, in congruence, but to the wrong agenda. So to Sneha's question, blow that up. If that's your vision, break it down. Therefore, what does it need in terms of talent? What does it need in terms of behavior? So what do you need to reinforce? So if you need to reinforce 3 or 4 behaviors, is your performance system driving that? Is your reward system driving that? Is your recognition system driving that? Are your managers role modeling that? Are the managers picking those little things to reinforce that message? It is doable, but it takes time. It needs resolve. But if everyone wants to make 2-minute noodles, then unfortunately we are playing game of tactics, and we are then literally actually playing snakes and ladders. If you're lucky, you'll get there, but if you're not, then you're going to slide down and wonder, oh, what went wrong? You were on the wrong track, but you never cared to listen because that time your valuation was going up. So you cared till the share prices fall. Then you wake up and say, yeah, there's a problem here, right? And so many examples around that. So it's a very to me a very strategic challenge, and many organizations need help. And the hope is a few are more willing, but the irony is that many are still living in a world of denial, and that is why the vision and the engagement connect is not as palpable and direct.
Right. Really well said. So I want to kind of connect to something that you said a little bit earlier. You said the organization will kind of attract the kind of talent that is right for it. You gave an example of somebody who likes job stability will automatically be attracted to government jobs and so on. So what role does talent brand management or employer brand building play, and how can organizations position themselves in a way to attract the talent that is perfect or that is just right for their organizations? What can companies do?
Very good question, Shrikant. First, the simple answer, it matters, right? It matters. Creating the right aura, the right recall of your institution is very, very critical. And if people don't know about it, it's an opportunity lost for you and an opportunity lost for that talent, because he or she doesn't know that you exist. So it's very important. Uh, but where we fail, and that's where the problem is, we all are trying to become a Me Too product. You look at any of these websites or their social media, this thing, it all looks, everything seems to be a chocolate company. But you're not going to be a chocolate company. If you are, let us say, a health company, you will be different from a chocolate company, and you'll be different from an IT company, you'll be different from something else. If you are a more rural intensive company, your appeal will be a little different, because what your talent or your definition of talent will be little different, if not entirely different, than something which is more urban. So it's very important. I mean, when the board or the CEO, the CHRO were to sit, they should step back and say, okay, if this is where we want to play, what is the kind of talent we are looking for? And once you're clear about the kind of talent you're looking for, then you start building an ecosystem, a culture, and the levels of engagement, or the kinds of engagement that will matter to that group of people. And within that, again, the caveat remains: two people are not Siamese twins, right? They are different. So it is so important. And therefore, the brand that you build, the purpose that you talk about, must be authentic. Unfortunately, today everyone looks almost a clone of the other. So someone and everyone, even from a talent side, let me not absolve them. The talent side is also a problem. You are here. This is your reality, but you are wanting to masquerade saying that, no, I also want only free pizza, and which is not you. You are deeper. You want very high quality of work. For you, pizza and coke does not matter, but because five other friends are saying free pizza and coke, you also want to join that company. So you have to be discerning. I've also gone a step further, and if ever someone were to do a PhD on what I write or what I have written, I've said more than the employer brand today, it is the manager's brand that should matter more for the talent to make the final pick. It doesn't matter what company Prabir you are. Prabir is Prabir. It doesn't matter which jersey I was wearing at that time. I have a reputation other than my companies. So people will work for Prabir. It doesn't matter whether it's a PRABIR JHA People Advisory or any of my companies in the past or anything, who knows, in the future. The important point is, today the brand of the manager has started becoming equally important, because it's a more transparent world. You can Google people are connected to almost everyone. There's, you research, you'll get 20 kind of things about people. And I think that's the right way of doing it, because in an ocean called an organization, what company X is, I don't know what Tesla is like, but I will only know if I work in Tesla. Okay, this is my experience of my manager, and that is my Tesla experience. That is the reality, right? Now, if five such managers are useless, this company becomes a bad company. If all these five managers are great managers, and what I hear, then I assume Tesla is a great company, just as an example. I don't know whether it is or it is not, right? But therefore, the role of managers as ambassadors of the brand is very important. Of course, HR and communications and all of them can help build it. But again, the larger issue is, are you strategically honest and clear about the brand you posture to be? Because if you're posture that it's a free world and it's a equal opportunity employer and we enjoy all that, then the day I join, I'm told, check with me, check with me, check with me. You can do whatever brand building. The feedback of the exiting employee or an ex-employee will actually dilute your brand and hurt your brand even more. So let there be no dissonance. Don't over position your brand where you are not what you want, wanting the world to think. Then you'll be seen as a fraud, which is not good for employer branding.
Right, right. Awesome. I think it's been phenomenal. We're at about 44 minutes now. We have time for one more question, I think. And I really want to ask you this. Your career has spanned about 30 years. You worked for the government of India, then you worked for several other sectors, and through you've been working with HR, right? So tell us a little bit about what was it even called HR back then in the 1990s? What is it called, and what is the role of HR? What is the role of HR now? And what is the role of HR going to be in the next 10 years, according to you?
Shrikant, I'll answer your question as briefly, but I hate HR for having this for the last 20 years, and even today. Will HR be strategic? Will HR have a seat at the table? Conference after conference. My
Mm.
disappointment with my fraternity is, if you are going to be treated like a spittoon, people will obviously treat you like that, right? Yes, it was called personnel once upon a time. It was called admin also once upon a time. Then it's called HR. Now no one says HR what. But today, if you look around, a lot of recall of HR, including in humor, right, or some of the very
Yes.
interesting creative bits that we see, is all about create fun at work, or check, check, check. And even more seriously, how many people can you hire, and how soon can you do your full and final settlement, and the rituals of appraisal, and what is otherwise called employee life cycle. I don't think HR is that. My own ask or expectation of HR, and again, I've written a lot about this. HR is a very strategic function. It is actually more strategy than transaction. But every company and every CEO deserves finally the HR it gets, because their own understanding and expectation of HR is so low. And CHROs love to survive. They love to just plead their bosses and hang in, right? So they are not challenging enough. I believe HR needs to display a lot more of self assurance. It needs to show a lot more of intellectual depth. You know, I'm not saying models and stuff, intellectual depth, clarity, cutting through the clutter. HR needs to realize it is more about getting managers to do things rather than doing things. I don't want to be
Yeah.
seen as Rangoli competition is HR. Sorry. I've said this to my team so many years. It doesn't engage at all. Why do you have nothing against it? Do it. But if you expect that to engage, it won't work. So HR must repivot itself to think, relate, influence, and act as a true agent of strategy formulation and deployment. Today, HR is seen only as a handmaiden of management action, and it gets therefore beaten up both ways, right? So people will say HR ने बोला इसलिए निकाल दिया, HR ने तुम्हारा increment दिया. It's a difficult function, I realize. But HR has also loved wallowing in activities and transactions, which it should stop doing. It is not their job. But it has to start with strong CHROs, strong role models, strong. I honestly think we need more role models of the better kind in HR than what we have at the moment. It needs a new generation of HR leaders to look up to.
Awesome, awesome. I really, really love this conversation. Thank you so much, Prabir. We're at the absolute end of this show. I want to really, really thank you for your time. It's been splendid. You brought in a great amount of clarity, and you were straight off the bat, not mincing any words. And
That's the
and
reputation, Shrikant. I told you. That's the reputation. I can't mince, I can't just round things up. You must recognize the elephant in the room, and we have quite a few. But it's been a privilege, and I loved your questions, and we shall stay in touch. And God bless you on this larger pursuit you have of building greater awareness about the agenda called employee engagement. So thank you again.
thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a
Bye-bye.
fantastic day and fantastic weekend ahead. And thank you everyone who's joined us. I hope you had a great time. See you again in the next episode, which is going to be happening next Friday. See you. Bye bye.
Bye.